All right, how's it going, everybody? Welcome to our Footprint Data Drive number 5. Actually, this time is going to be really exciting for me because I have a great guest speaker. His name's Zhang from Economics Design, and just to keep it short, you guys, Kiefer's the man. Especially when it comes to GameFi tokenomics and just tokenomics in general. Kiefer's really great at explaining things, explaining tokenomics so that I can understand them, and not only that, he's a great friend. So without further ado, let's pass it on to you, Kiefer. How you doing, buddy?
Hey Alex, doing good. Yeah, thanks for having me on here. Yeah, currently just in the nice little midweek leeway between ETH Denver and GDC. So the tail end of my ETH Denver sickness, just getting ready for my GDC sickness.
Yeah, it's funny. I saw your tweet that said, "Is it really is it a conference KOL if you didn't get or if you didn't get sick, or is it to get sick to get a conference KOL?" Just cracked me up. Because I got COVID too, dude. I got COVID during ETH Denver, so that really sucked. So I feel you,
How
man.
you know you network right now?
Yeah. Oh, so what about so anyways, I guess this would be a great start. I want to ask you, since you were speaking at the Gamer 7 conference, which was sweet, I just want to see, wanted to get your takeaways. Do you see anything that was really inspiring, invigorating for GameFi structures and entering, actually seeing some promise in Web3 gaming at ETH Denver?
Yeah, so perhaps my first impression was just the overall presence we had in gaming at the conference. There was a really large and vibrant section at the conference floor itself around gaming, and while there weren't a ton, or there wasn't a high quantity of gaming focused side events, the real gamers side event that we were at that I spoke at and saw you there was a really quality one, and so saw definitely growing interest in GameFi even in this bear market that we're in, but also saw a lot of promise from the DAO side. Especially give a shout out to Game Seven, and I got to learn a lot more about what they were doing there in building out some awesome things that are helping the whole sector. So they for those who aren't aware of them, they have, I think it's like a $500 million fund for for building out things that are useful to everyone, essentially everyone who's building things in Web3. Because there's a lot of components of it that not every team needs to be building every part of the infrastructure, and so helping identify like what is useful to the most people, and also just doing research around that. I think that was really cool to learn more about what they were doing, and I think it's gonna be a lot of good for the overall space.
Yeah, I agree with you 100% there. I think it's really too much to get game studios to be doing it all. I really think they're getting spread a little bit too thin. It's already hard enough to make a DeFi protocol, right? So, adding gaming on top of that. So I wanted to talk about too. What was the talk that you were talking about? What was the topic? And was there any like really cool takeaways you have from that fireside?
Yeah, let's see. So I actually hopped in to two different panels at that gamer event. Yeah, it was. Yeah, they had me in originally on the Dow panel. Then they realized that they probably should have an economist on the economic sustainability panel. And so, yeah, when on the Dow one, I kind of already touched a little bit on the Dow side, but it was a lot of just kind of sharing interesting things that DAOs are working on in the space. And yeah, the quick shout out like Wolves DAO, Fog DAO, a lot of really great people putting their heads together to help figure out how to move the space forward. I think that's a really cool part of Web3 where it's very community driven and collaborative. People want to see other projects succeed and push the whole space forward. It's not so much about keeping everything private and just doing the one thing that will help yourself do better, but really seeing how can we make Web3 gaming get to the point where it does overall reach mainstream adoption. We're kind of all in this together. And then on the economic side, just had a lot of different chats about what it means to have a sustainable game, and what goes into design some of these economies, and can definitely get into some other components there.
Yeah, and I guess before we go deeper into some of these tokenomics, let's talk about just an overview from, how tokenomics have evolved in your eyes from, say, the beginning of, 2022 to now, and what are kind of some models that you will see in the past, and what kind of things that you see are emerging and moving forward here to help, keep retention and to keep something to keep a game actually just sustainable, for at least, as the guy from DFK said, at least 6 months. I guess he said if you don't have enough for a 6 month runway, don't release it. But sometimes, it's just not sustainable. So could you give us a bit of an overview?
Yeah, so I guess we can start off with uh, with Axie Infinity as a starting point. And so if we're looking like 20, 21, 22, with the classic play to earn, where you have uh, fundamentally underlying it a bit of a reliance on more people joining. So if people have the ability to earn something in these economies, it's really interesting to a lot of people, but especially people who are there who they want to make money, and that's a primary motivation. But that's not necessarily the type of people or the type of activity that's actually going to be beneficial to the project in the long run. So you put out these incentives, you have the ability to play in order to earn. So you mechanically you're getting tokens for essentially pretty basic level participation in the gameplay. There's the controls on that is each player is able to essentially earn a certain quantity per day, and the end result of that is pretty excessive inflation of that token, a large amount of users who are attracted purely because they're trying to extract value and make the most money possible, and sort of a pump and dump style chart when you look at the overall impact of this. And that's it's not really good for the overall success of the project or the space as a whole. It has perception problems of attracting the wrong users, people at the end feeling burned, and overall just perception of the space being a Ponzi. And so these types of models, it got some initial attention, but overall I think put the Web3 space in a bit of a bad light, and it focused on some of the wrong things. So that was the first level here of play to earn games, and there was obviously a lot of other projects that followed in Axie's footsteps there with pretty similar models that worked out in pretty similar ways. And then moving forward a bit, the narrative switched towards play and earn,
Hmm.
and for this meant different things to different people. Generally, it's that the motivation is moving away from earning, or at least that's the goal that a lot of these teams have in mind for how they're marketing it and how they're trying to build their game.
Hmm.
But I think in actuality, a lot of the games that are building quote unquote play and earn games are really just building something that is still aligned from a fundamental perspective with where we were at with play and earn games, where even when we think about how the assets are actually distributed, so how users are actually getting something of value. This could be tokens, this could be NFTs. Even a lot of these more recent games are still in a spot where where the person plays the game. It's a predictable input, so it's a certain type of gameplay action that they can do over and over, and are able to get they're able to expect a certain output, and so that kind of implies a wage for their time. So if I just keep doing this thing in the game, I'm going to get this amount of tokens or this NFT, and that even though it's marketed as play and earn, and that's not the focus. Fundamentally, a lot of the components are still in there. And
So
so
would you say, Kiefer, that play and earn is just bear market equivalent of pay to earn? They just scale down the rewards.
yeah. um, yeah, so I think people are getting that you want to move away from the focus on earning, but the actual implementation could use a little bit more work in thinking about how do you add a bit of unpredictability to this? So I think randomization is an important component, or segmentation of
Mm.
or limitation on who is actually able to earn something. Because if everyone has the capability to earn something, then and it's way too easy to do that, then that's really just going to attract the wrong type of people. And if you're just rewarding this essentially participation, then that's not at the end of the day what's going to drive success. You want to really think about what is the key activity that is actually driving value here. It could be spending. It could be creating content, so user-generated content. It could be curating that user-generated content. And so these are the sort of things to think about that are actually providing value to the developers, the game, the overall ecosystem. And these are the type of things that actually are should be incentivized, not just pure participation or pure playing the game. And so if you start rewarding, and so the teams that are moving more in that direction of thinking of it more as a retention tool rather than a user acquisition tool, I
Hmm.
think are going to be a bit more successful here because they're really doing a better job at targeting the incentives. And these you can think of all these Web3 components, tokens, NFTs of various types, as incentive tools, to be used very carefully. Even though they're sort of like free to create, there's that opportunity cost, and so you want to make sure that you're using that pool of potential incentives the most effective way possible to actually drive value and drive these key components around retention of your most important users to get the success of the game.
So I guess a good question is, what are some of these tools of retention that you see right now that a lot of game studios or ecosystems or launchers are really missing the point on here? Because I would 100% agree that we should be treating GameFi Web3 games. I want to move away from the term GameFi, but I want to treat Web3 games more as a retention tool, right? And that's simply just by having a game that someone wants to play over and over again. So what do you think? Where are these games here really missing the mark? Are the games just not fun enough? What do you think they're missing when it comes to keeping this retention?
Yeah, so obviously fun is an important part of it. I think we've established. I
Mm-hmm.
think we have to all agree that's the minimum level to be at. But in terms of retaining, or so if we're thinking about like difference between Web 2 and Web 3, like in both cases, baseline is you need a fun game. You need the actual game mechanics themselves to be useful for retention. But if we're trying to leverage Web3, and think about the economic part, not just at the minimum level of not holding you back and making it unsustainable, but as something that can actually push your product forward and make you more successful than a Web2 counterpart, is really tied to those incentive systems. And yeah, that's kind of going back to what I was
Mm-hmm.
covering there before. And in terms of how this can actually take shape, I don't think that there's good examples to point to publicly yet, but I can talk to some kind of general ideas that talking with projects that are kind of behind the scenes with their models that aren't quite out yet, but they're thinking about um, ways that they can use sort of in either on-chain assets or off-chain intermediary assets as reward systems for the most important activities. And a way something you can kind of compare this to is if you think about casino VIP programs or like prize programs or at arcades.
Mm-hmm.
It's you're doing these beneficial activities, and spending is a big portion of that. But this kind of thing that's going to keep them engaged. Because if you look at the high rollers at a casino, right? They're being they're getting all these perks. They're getting the free hotel room. They're getting basically anything they could want at that place because they want to be kept there. And right now, like games, they don't really have those kinds of financial retention programs for high rollers, which is a little weird because if you look free to play in Web 2, like the that 2 to 5% of whales or high rollers in free to play games are driving basically all the revenue to for those projects. And in Web3, especially if you're following the free to play model, it's retaining those big users with obviously all sorts of non-financial gameplay benefits, but with the additional potential of financial rewards as well. And this doesn't have to just be straight up cash. This is NFTs that provide various types of cosmetic or gameplay benefits depending on the situation, or tokens or something that confers equity in the overall ecosystem, but something that helps tie these users into the system in ways that are kind of over time aligned with whatever sort of financial or other benefit they're adding to the ecosystem. So yeah, so the overall summary of that is really think about what is this participant adding and how can you reward the people who are creating the greatest benefit to this ecosystem.
Absolutely. That is a great answer. I think too that is like rewarding the whales too, and I really don't see it happening enough. Like you said, that casino example is absolutely perfect. So have you? I guess in your consulting here, have you seen more of a shift looking towards rewarding these whales? Is this something we're going to be seeing a bit more? We're going to see a bit more utility and VIP spotlights on the people driving this revenue in 2023. Is that the sentiment here?
Um, it's it's a little bit hard to say. It's definitely like a sample size issue in terms of being able to say if that's where the whole space is going. But
Mm.
I can definitely say that there are projects that are moving in that direction, and I think fundamentally that makes sense. Even what because once projects start doing it, it's going to become this kind of uh, it's going to be this competition because the whales they have limited or their time is more limited than their money. Like what are you actually going to be able to get them to play? Because all these different developers are going to be trying to attract them and retain them in their ecosystems, and so financial incentives can be an additional component on that. Obviously, again, the baseline is you have to have a really great engaging game, but if you give them some sort of financial attachment to your ecosystem as well, that's going to be really big for gaining those supporters. And same for from like an influencer perspective as well. Of who are you able, how do you get attract those users that have these secondary effects of helping grow your ecosystem and pulling in other important players. So it'll be kind of this war in incentives battle between these different developers to attract those key users into their ecosystems.
You know what? I think I like that. I like to see a little bit of some healthy competition here, especially when it's benefiting the people, whether it be the whales or not. Um, so I have a question too. I want to bring it back to Solana. And I want to talk about how Move to Earn is just dominating Solana's active users. Um, do you see more of these kind of health apps? Like I've also seen one for meditate to earn. There's all kinds of crazy ones out there. Sex to earn, all that sort of fun stuff. But I want to talk about Move to Earn and just kind of the health aspect. Do you see stuff like or projects like this being sustainable, or is how do we get value out of walking, for example?
Yeah, so the my initial answer on sustainability is generally not really.
Hmm.
But the kind of test I like to give for initial thoughts on whether something could be viable as as having a Web3 component to it. Obviously, there's lots of intricacies in how it's actually implemented, but like high level first impression is if you strip all of the Web3 components of it out, all of the incentives, what is left, and how would you monetize it in a non Web3 way? And so, if thinking about these kind of health apps in general, um, it seems to me that it would be primarily like advertisement driven, or potentially if you have a really strong product, you could potentially have like a premium monetization, so basically like a fixed payment or subscription. But given the amount of competition for these types of apps in the market, it seems like they've mostly been driven down to competing for as a free product. And so when you're trying to create a Web3 version of that, and you're thinking of how to monetize it, and if if you think that users realistically aren't going to pay for anything because they could go to a Web2 alternative that's free, then now you have to think of, so what is the motivation that they're left with for why they're
Hmm.
buying something in a Web3 version of this? And so the only motivation that's left is financial incentives. They're buying it, or not so much financial incentives, but a motivation to try to make money from participating in this. And so if the sole motivation for people buying assets for this particular product is to try to make money, then you have the zero sum game where everyone's just competing against each other to try to make money, and are only doing it because other people are buying in. And so, as I'm describing this, it's essentially describing the structure of a Ponzi scheme. So, so there needs to be the core product needs to have some demand for it, that from people who are not expecting a financial return. So that's the really key important. Like, what is the demand driver that's not someone buying in because they're trying to make money? There needs to be a component of that, and it can't be, it has to be a strong component of that. Like some of these products, they'll be like, well, this is the main thing, but we'll smack some cosmetics onto the business model as well, and now they can say, okay, we have something else that people can buy. But if it's just this small add-on, that's that's not fundamentally going to make a difference to why people are actually participating in the product, and you still end up in the same place.
Right, and I'm not gonna lie, I had a Cathlete, and I do have a couple of those move to earn um, app or yeah, I guess apps on my phone. But I just do it because I gotta get my ass on a treadmill, truthfully. So
Yeah,
right
and
now,
this isn't saying that these don't have a place. Like for people who want who want to be in there for a financial for the financial component of it and know the risk. Like I know there are a lot of people in Web3 that they straight up only want to participate in things that are pretty much Ponzi's, because that's the type of risk preference they like. As long as they know what they're getting themselves into, that's fine. As long as you're not burning unsuspecting people. But then also on your side, like if it is something that, if you need a financial component in there to help motivate you, and that's what gets you to actually exercise, like best to you on that. I fully respect that as well. But it's part of just like how these projects promote themselves and burn people who don't totally understand the Ponzi side of it.
mhm.
That's where the problem really lies for me.
Absolutely. Ethics is a huge part of Web3, right? Especially where, one of the baseline cores is reputation is everything. And I guess with that, you guys, I want to take, if you guys are listening here, have any questions, feel free to pop them in the community sharing chat box here. If you have any questions for me or Kiefer, now's the time. We're going to run it a little bit short today. Kiefer's got another meeting. So now's the time. If you have any questions, pop them in the chat. And I guess in the meantime too, I'll let you do any kind of shilling about what you're doing at Econs Design and what economics design is about.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I'm a consultant at economics design. Basically, we help Web3 companies design sustainable economies. And so I'm on the gaming side of it. So we're working with teams like Shrapnel and Sparkadia, and basically designing, auditing, modeling, or just being like an embedded, ongoing economics assistant to these type of teams. We also have people working on the DeFi infrastructure side as well, basically anything Web3, working with teams like IOG, team behind Cardano. So just really love getting into anything on the Web3 economics and incentive side of things. So my DMs are open on here on Discord or on Twitter or LinkedIn at Keeper Zhang.
Sweet. Yeah, so I guess we'll give it another 30 more seconds. In the meantime, uh, what are you most excited about here for? Because you're talking about it, we're in the meantime of GDC. So what are you excited about for GDC? And in case you guys don't know, GDC stands for the Game Developers Conference, which is happening in San Francisco, which is sweet. So if you guys, or so, what are you looking forward to, and what are you hoping to see at this conference, Kiefer?
Yeah, so this will be an interesting one. This is actually going to be my first GDC, and so it's a mix here. There are a lot of people that I've been speaking with for some of them for quite a while in a virtual setting. There's just something really cool about getting a chance to meet and connect in an in-person environment, and so kind of just want to get that chance to build those relationships a little bit more. Um, Also, just the chance to meet so many new people, building new things. I feel like every time I go to a conference, I just come away with learning a ton and with a better appreciation and I guess bullishness on the space. It's just like I always feel like people are building super cool stuff, but after spending a week just talking to some super smart people building amazing things, then just uh, get stronger and stronger conviction and yeah, just really hoping to get a little more taste of that. Unfortunately, I didn't end up getting the pass that would allow me to see any of the talks. But for anyone going that does have that access, there are some great talks coming up. For those interested from an economics perspective, there's one by Edward Castronova, who is a brilliant economist, talking about sustainable economies in Web3. So would 100% recommend that one. But yeah, overall, that's what I'm looking for. What are you looking forward to? Or actually, I didn't confirm. Are you going to GDC?
I don't think so. Yes, I don't think I'm going for this time. But maybe if I find a one way, from Vancouver to San Francisco, flights are cheap. So I'll keep my eyes out for any deals, and I might end up popping over. Who knows? Anyways, Kiefer, with that, I gotta let you go to another meeting. So let's wrap it up here. I really appreciate you coming on today and sharing your knowledge and really, giving us an overview of GameFi tokenomics and hoping at least I hope help the community, understand it a little bit more and on a deeper level here, and what tokenomics is really about and what to look for when it comes to incentives and just value that makes you want to play. So with that, I guess we'll end it there. Kiefer, thanks again, buddy.
Thanks so much for having me, Alex.
Great. All right. For everyone else, ciao for now.